I'd like to welcome you all to a field day sponsored by Sustainable Agriculture and Research and Education, North Central SARE, S-A-R-E, which you can find on the web, and also SDSU Extension, and the South Dakota Grasslands Coalition. And we're being helped in our presentations today by Diane Narem, botanist from SDSU, a graduate student. And today we're going to look at our grazing system, and we're going to talk about plant and animal health and how the populations of invertebrates like dung beetles and pollinators all contribute to cattle production and stability in the rangeland. So I hope you enjoy yourselves.
And my name's Diane Narem. I'm Linda's daughter, and I'm also a master's student at SDSU. I've been working on a project up on the South Dakota Prairie Coteau, looking at different prairie communities and also looking at habitat for the Dakota skipper butterfly, which some of you probably heard about. It's on the threatened species list now. And since I talked to my mom yesterday, and I was trying to get like an idea of what the theme was today, and we kind of figured out it's, you know, invertebrate community and how to increase the diversity and health of your insect community on your pastures. And so what I decided to look at specifically was plants that are good for pollinators, and then even a smaller intersection of that, because there's a lot of plants that are decreasers, which are plants that decrease under grazing and especially heavy grazing. So these decreaser plants that you don't find a lot of in pastures. I've been looking around and I found some of them out there, and I made some handouts that have these decreaser wildflowers that are very good for pollinators. But decreasers are plants that decrease in number under grazing conditions, and especially heavy grazing conditions. And that's either because they're really yummy and the cows just like to eat them first, or because they're sensitive to disturbance like compaction from the soil. But I think a lot of them are just tasty, and so that's why they like to eat them. And they're also sensitive to invasive species coming in, so exotic grasses like will outcompete them. A lot of times you'll find these native species, these decreaser forbs, on hilltops because they're more competitive in the more xeric conditions, or the areas that aren't as moist. So if there's less soil moisture, you'll find better competitiveness of native species. I'm going to show you some good plants, and then while we're out there, there's actually some bad plants too, so I might just show you those. And some plants that are just in the middle, increaser native plants. But if you see these decreaser forbs on your pasture, what that means is you are grazing for diversity. That means you are encapsulating a larger amount of plant diversity on your pasture, and that in turn helps native pollinators be more diverse in their communities. And we're talking about bees, but also different types of beetles, different types of butterflies, even hummingbirds. Some of these flowers are large enough that hummingbirds can use them. And for those of you that do have the handouts, we won't see all of the plants that are in the handouts here today, but I thought I would put them in there because they are important. So if you want to use it later in your own pastures and look for them, then you can use the identification of the handouts. All right, so just follow me. We're going to go out this way. So this is not just an exotic plant, but an invasive plant that will take over. And my mom's actually implemented some flea beetles, or I forgot what they're called, but the beetles that eat the spurge. And they've been helping take care of this problem. So, I know you guys, some of you are far away, but does anybody know what this plant is here? Lead plant. Yeah, and that's actually in the handout. It's a decreaser forb, and it's been marked as a pollinator for a variety of native bee species. There's this plant here, and you guys can like maybe come in and then like circle out so other people can see. But this over here, this is another native prairie species indicative of like a good healthy native prairie. It's called prairie turnip. It's very distinctive when you see it now, but later in the summer season it will wither up and it'll kind of disappear, so you won't see it later in the summer season. Its roots are edible, that's why it's called prairie turnip, but that's also good for native pollinators. That's not in the handout. And then we have plants over here. I know it's hard for everyone to see. Okay, so I'm just gonna pluck this. This is a good one. This is stiff sunflower. And you can tell stiff sunflower because it's a hairy. You can see the little hairs on it. And then its leaves are opposite each other. So you can actually look at that and pass it around. That's been noted as, that's in the handout, and that's been noted as a really good source for native pollinators. And I grouped it together on the handout with a plant called oxeye. And I grouped them together because they're very similar looking, but oxeye has bigger leaves. And oxeye is noted as a plant that houses natural predators of pest insects. So it itself may not be like a great source for the pollinators, but if you have it around, it's a home for natural predators that help control the pests. And then over here, it's hard to see, but this is echinacea. And echinacea, it's in the handout, it has this flower that comes up on a single stalk, and it's this big purple to pinkish flower. It's very, very recognizable. And the way you can tell echinacea is its leaves are like rough, it has this rough hairy texture to them, and they also have 3 veins, a very distinct 3 venation on its leaves. So that's how you tell echinacea from each other. I'll just pass that leaf around. You want from other prairie plants. But it's important for a variety of pollinators as well. It's a very good nectar source. And then I don't really want to pull this plant up, because maybe I can just pull the top off. This is a liatris here. And I have liatris in the handout. It's, I grouped together, there's a bunch of different species, but they're all, the common name is gay feather or blazing star. And when they flower, they have this stalk that comes up, and then they have these little clumps of flowers that go along the top of the stalk. And they're really great for native pollinators. This species is dotted gay feather, and it doesn't get as big as the other gay feathers. Other gay feathers get like all the way up here. And they bloom in late August, September. Over here, we have silky aster. It's named because it has these silky leaves. This is ground cherry, Virginia ground cherry. And it's not a bad plant, it's not a good plant, it's just one of those that shows up, but it is native. A really, really good source of pollination, or a really good source of nectar for native pollinators. When it flowers, it gets these short little like cone-like purple flowers on these single stalks. You can pass that around. So that's purple prairie clover. That's another decreaser that should be on your handout. And these produce really beautiful white flowers. It's I think it's Caroline delphinium is the common name. It's good for pollinators. It's not one of those amazing pollinator plants, but it's a good flower to have. Ground plum. It's a milk vetch, and it's in the handout. I just lumped all the milk vetches together because there's 3 different milk vetches that are decreasers. In general, they're a great native forb. They're great for pollinators. This one's really cool because it has, I guess I should say for identification, most of the vetches have these leaves where it's a single stem, it's a single leaf stem coming out from the main stem, and then there's leaves opposite each other all along it. So it's a compound leaf. You can, there you go, take that and pass that around. So the vetches will have that, and then they'll also, when they bloom, they have a pea-like flower because they're in the pea family. So if you know what garden peas and what their flowers look like, they have like the hood, and then there's something that comes up like that. It's in the handout. Yeah, so they all have that same kind of flower. They have different growth forms and different flower colors. this Crassicarpus, or sorry, that's the scientific name. This ground plum produces seeds that are actually quite tasty. You can eat them. But I mean, I don't recommend like people that aren't botanists to just go out and like eat some of them, because some astragalus are actually poisonous. But these are not, and that's why it's called ground plum. They kind of taste like a pea, actually, just like a woody pea. So, yeah. So this is a really good one to have. This is a decreaser forb. It's great for pollinators, and it's a good plant. So that's all I have for you guys. So we can just like slowly walk back, and if you have any plant questions for me or identification questions, don't hesitate. Just come up and I'll answer.